My brothers, since the very beginning of time, since the very beginning of the creation of man, we have been at war. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in multiple places in the Quran, He reminds the human being, Shaytan, Iblis is your enemy, so therefore take him as an enemy. So severe is this animosity of Shaytan with the human being. You know, ever watched a child come into this world? The first thing he does is he cries. And there is a narration that says that is because Shaytan waits for the baby to be born, and then he pricks him, he stabs him until he makes him cry, and he says to him, you and I, we are enemies. So imagine, the moment that I came out of my mother, Shaytan was waiting there to declare his war with me and remind me that I am your enemy. Until the very last moment of your life, guess who will also be there waiting? The same enemy. Abdullah ibn al-Imam Ahmad radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he says, I was there when my father was dying. And he says, and he was laying there on the bed and he was going through these, what they call sakarat al-maut, the last moments of life. You know, he's in and out of consciousness. He says, and as my father gained consciousness, he says, la ba'd, no, not yet, no, not yet. So Abdullah says, I was curious, why is my father saying no, not yet? Is he afraid of death? He says, and then my father, he lost consciousness. He says, so I waited there and I was anxious and I was worried. He said, until I waited until my father, he gained consciousness again. And therefore I asked him, I said to my father, why were you saying no, not yet? Don't you want to die? And then Imam Ahmad, he says to his son Abdullah, he says to him, no, my son, I did not say no, not yet because I didn't want to die. I said no, not yet because Shaytan was standing in front of me and he was biting on his fingernails and he was telling me, oh Ahmad, you have slipped out of my hands. Ahmad, you've slipped out of my hands. So therefore I replied and I said to him, no, not yet. Not until I'm dead and gone is the war over between you and I. So if from the very moment I was born, Shaytan is there, and at the very last moment of my life, Shaytan is there, and he's there, and his oath and his promise to Allah is to show that I will be ungrateful, to try and distract me and take me away from Allah Azza wa Jal. And one of the biggest tricks of Shaytan is to belittle any good that you do. Unfortunately, even within ourselves as Muslims, we tend to look down upon. And this is actually from Shaytan. Is that it? Is that all you did? Is that all you gave? Is that all you could do? This is from Shaytan. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in the authentic hadith, never belittle any act of good. Don't let Shaytan fool you and convince you that is that it. No, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is never belittle any act of good. If there's any good that you can do, no matter what it is, do it. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى. Imagine Allah Azza wa Jal says, anyone who does an atom's weight of good. What is an atom? How insignificant is an atom to any human being? Something you can't even see with your own eyes. But Allah Azza wa Jal says, anyone who does an atom's weight of good, he shall verily see it on the day of resurrection. So my brothers and sisters, take every single opportunity that you can. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, even meeting your brother with a cheerful face, meeting someone with a smile on your face, that's a sadaqah, that's an act of charity.